there's a life I could have known, one beyond my wildest dreams. Maybe that one could have carried me to streets of gold. Things aren't always as they seem. Looking back on all the chances that I missed, some I held, some slipped away. One street over where my memories exist, I wondered what would change, I really couldn't say. In this life there's nothing certain, except the curtain that rises to the stage. Silly games of second guessing, I just forget the lessons that I couldn't learn. Because one street over there's a life I could have known, would have kept me from the one I had today. Except the curtain that rises to the stage. Silly games of second guessing, I just forget the lessons that I couldn't learn. Because one street over there's a life I could have known, would have kept me from one I had today.
Oh, good morning. How you doing? Robeson County and points beyond. This is 1100 WSGI. I'm U-Turn LaVern, and this is one street over. And oh my goodness, I'm so glad to be back. You have no idea. I feel like I don't know. It's just so weird. I've been doing radio for so long. When I don't get to be on radio for a little bit, it just messes with my head. And so I thank you so much for those who filled in while I was away. Lee Marine, I know Deborah Gant filled in one day, and haven't had a chance to really come on in here, Senator, and hadn't had a chance to really watch all that because I was learning to be a teacher. I was at a teacher training, a new teacher's training in Chattanooga. No, I was in Knoxville. I can't keep my head in the game. Anyway, I'm back. Been gone a week, and just a little heads up though, I'm not planning on being gone a ton more ever again. Just say I hate not being on radio. Kerry, you started this, Betty. What are you doing? Senator Kerry Roberts is here. No, but I am going to be gone the Tuesday and Wednesday after Labor Day because my mom's having her cancer surgery. Mom's got cancer, and she's doing good, but the surgery is happening. So I got a couple more days I'm going to be gone, but then I'm hoping I'm not going to be gone till maybe the holidays. I don't know. I might take some time off right after Christmas, but I don't like not doing this. You kind of knew, didn't you? People don't realize he's responsible for this. He's the one who started this stuff.
No, your career started long before I had anything to do with anything.
But I'm talking about being and doing this show. Mm-hmm. And he's the one who came, LaVern, you need to come in and do this. And thank you for knowing that I needed that door to open. And because it's just, I love it. I love it. And
it's good for the community too.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And speaking of the community, there's been a lot going on. And there's so many things. I'll just tell you, now we're approaching fair time very quickly. So Tommy Marsh is coming in. Crooked Eye Tommy. Have you met Crooked Eye Tommy? You got to get to know him.
I don't know him by that name, but
Tommy Marsh?
Yeah.
Have you met him?
I think so, but I don't.
He's the blues dude. He's the blues guy. But anyway, he's in charge of all the music for the fair, so he's going to be in here on Wednesday. So we got that going on. But no,
I've not met him. That's
he's a great guy. But anyway, so he's coming in on Wednesday to talk about all the things with the fair and stuff going on there.
Why did they move to September? Which, by the way, I like.
I'm thrilled.
Yeah. not so hot.
I think I've talked to Trent a little bit about that and just a lot of things, because I think that there's so much because they were right there around Labor Day, and there's so much competition with that week. And two, the heat. I mean, it's just not fun going to a fair in the Wilson County Fair. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All I heard, my family.
7 degrees.
Yeah. I mean, my kids live out there and they went some, but it was just miserable. Yeah. And that's not what a county fair is supposed to be. I'm used to going to the county fair up in Michigan, where Mark is from. And there's like a kiss of autumn in the air. And it happens at Labor Day. We would go every year until the kids started playing sports. That was our routine. We would go to the fair and we would get up there. We would leave here and it would just be just terrible, stinking hot. And as we would get north of Chicago, it'd be like, that's what's, you'd just get that little kiss of fall, and then you'd get up there and the trees were starting to get a little color, and it was just so refreshing. Even though we'd come back here and it'd still be hot, but I'm thrilled we're doing the fair later.
Well, and in the days before air conditioning, I don't guess anybody. But I don't know. I'm not, the heat just, don't get me wrong. I like to sleep in cold, so I don't sleep well when the air conditioner's out, like we experienced right before Nora's wedding. Great timing.
That was crazy.
But I like Saturday, I rode my bike 68 miles and people were just looking at me like I was crazy. And it's like, I don't know.
Did you start early to do that? Did you get out?
That was my intention, but I'm home alone right now, so I was going to get up and go at like 7:00, and then I got busy doing other stuff, and I didn't leave till 10:30. And I was looking at the weather, and I thought, okay, this was not very well planned, because I already knew I was going to ride for a while.
Yeah,
and I don't think I left until 10:30, so I was probably riding at the hottest part of the day. But the previous Saturday, I did my Springfield to Waverly ride, which was 100 miles. And this is the difference the heat makes. I rode 68 miles in it probably Saturday in the heat. And it probably was harder than riding 100 miles the previous week, where it was a beautiful Saturday a week ago. High was, I don't know, like 80.
Yeah, it was
like that, 86.
It's going to be a little bit better this week, but anyway.
So it was not, the heat can really take it out of you, but so I don't know. I've always been that way. Back when in the day when we owned the bike stores and it was bike racing, we used to have a 4th of July ride every year, which was just kind of like it was a 100-mile ride that we did every 4th of July, and it was intended to be a ride of attrition. We'd almost dare people to come. And see if they could
see if you could do it.
See if you could do it without, calling somebody to come and get you.
That's hysterical. I'm impressed with you that you do this riding. And after, dying, everybody thought you were dead because of the brain aneurysm thing and all of that. And just to be back so strong and so athletic, it impresses the heck out of me when you talk about that.
Thank you. It's just keep in mind you are sitting down the whole time, so it's not like running a marathon.
I guess that's true, but still, bike riding. I grew up in the country where we just didn't have good areas to ride, so I was never a bike rider. Now my husband, oh good heavens, he would talk about skipping school on his bike and all the little. My husband loved riding bike, and so he would really love to get into it, but it was never something. We were on mini bikes and 3-wheelers before they were safe, or like they are now.
We didn't have money for those, so we had used old balloon tire bikes.
Okay.
And then one Christmas we got. Remember the banana seat bikes? Remember those?
Oh yes.
So one Christmas, we got banana seat bikes, and this was interesting because they came from I think Lowe's back in the day when Lowe's was like a local hardware store.
Okay.
Do you remember? You may in Kentucky you may not have had them, but you remember
not that I recall.
Montgomery Ward, right?
Yeah.
And Sears and Penny's, all the catalog stores. Well, Lowe's was at that time was just like a hardware store. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I assume it's the Lowe's that we have today, but I'm pretty
That'd be an interesting little history
I'm pretty
lesson
sure about that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, my brother's 13 months older. So mom and dad bought us bikes that were the same bike. So probably we wouldn't
fight
who
over
had the
them.
better bike, right? And so there was something wrong with mine, and dad had to take it back, and they couldn't get a replacement. They couldn't fix it or whatever. And I waited months. And, as a kid, I felt like I was waiting years, right?
It's like my
And
bike.
so I finally got another bike, and I honestly, I think it was probably, just to make it right, they probably upgraded the bike a little bit, and it was kind of an orangey color, and I remember that. And that was, we rode for miles, and then from there, when I turned, I think 12, my dad went to an actual bike shop and bought a Raleigh, if you remember the Raleigh.
I do.
And they were at that time still made in England. And of course, in the 70s, 10-speed bikes were kind of the newfangled racing bikes.
If they worked right.
Yeah. And, dad wanted to get a real bike, not one of those. So it was like a 3-speed touring bike. And then I wore that thing out. And then probably when I was 14 or 15, I bought a bona fide Italian, racing bike that I bought from a struggling college student who was about to get married, and he needed the money. And so he sold me. He was thinking, I'm getting married, I'm not going to keep riding. And so he sold me literally all his stuff, everything he had. And and that kind of embarked my serious riding. So I'm going to be 62 this month. So
Happy birthday.
thank you. So I've been doing it for, 50 years, and I've probably, not the whole time, because I did, stop for a while, but, and I've probably ridden over 250,000 miles.
That's incredible. I mean, this is your senator, guys. I think that's just kind of cool. And I got to say, though, so your birthday's in August?
No, September 24th.
We're not done with August yet. You said this month.
Well, I know.
I'm just teasing you. Today's actually my daddy's birthday. He passed away in 2012, but today would be Dad's birthday, and then my sister's is on the last day of August. So they both have gone. So
today's
the 28th.
Yeah.
The 28th. So LaDonna's will be coming up here at the end on Wednesday. And but we're talking with Senator Kerry Roberts, and I know we're 12 minutes in, and we haven't talked about what's going on the Hill. Ken Gamble's going, what's going on the Hill? We're going to have to get right to it. People will wring my neck if I don't say, okay, Senator Kerry Roberts talked to us about everything going on with special session and just, yeah.
Okay, but
where do you want to start?
I got to tell you 2 stories first.
Okay, let me do a break, and then we'll come back. You tell me your 2 stories, but we got to get to it. Okay, go right ahead, and we're going to pause for a second. Let's talk about Veterans Motorplex. Have you been to the races yet? Go to the races. If you want to find out what's happening at the races, you follow them at Highland Rim Speedway. Just jump over to Highland Rim Speedway and see what's happening at the races. Anything that is going on as far as if they have to have a rain delay, who's coming up on the weekend, what's happening, they cover it on that Highland Rim Facebook page. They are great about keeping you up to date, and we love talking about them because they are just a great sponsor of this program. Their season runs through October, and if you can get your hands on one of these we had Debbie in week before last, Debbie Keenan, if you can get a hold of one of the old installments of Let's Talk Trash, that back page is worth $40. You can take this back page of this newspaper, and it'll get in up to 6 kids and 2 adults, and that's a package price that they have all the time, that you can take the whole family for a great price, but you can do it for free if you can get a hold of one of these. But you can get the entire family in for $40. They got a great concession stand. You're going to have so much fun. Local favorites. You'll see even some teens out there racing sometimes. They'll have big wheel races for the kiddos. Great friends of this program. Jerry at Veterans Motorplex. When you get out there, it's the gates open at 4 o'clock every Saturday through October, and racing starts at 6, goes till about 9. You'll have a great time if you get out there, and when you do, please always let them know that U-Turn sent you. Okay, Senator Kerry Roberts in the house. I promise we're going to get to it. He has 2 stories he wants to tell, so you tell your stories, and we got to get right to the
and
what's happening.
We got plenty of time.
Okay.
It's not going to take that long to explain what's going on. So I'm doing the ride from Springfield to Waverly last Saturday. And of course, this is to raise awareness for flood victims and also a group called Appalachia Service Project, which has been rebuilding houses there, and they never left. They came early on, they've stayed, and, hopefully maybe some people felt inclined to donate. So two things happened that are worth mentioning. One is, so Diane and her friend, who was the tourism director for Humphreys County, they're just following at a distance, and they pull over and then they'll catch up to me and whatnot. But they've got a big sign on the back of the truck that just says, cycling for flood victims, and tells people where to go to donate. And so a guy pulls up, flags him down. We're on a country road somewhere, and he approaches him and he says, "Hey, I know it says give online, but could I give you some money?" And so they say, "Sure." And he said, "I know it's not much, but it's all I got." And he gives them $8.
Bless.
Yeah. And so they caught up to me and they told me about it. So we were about to the point where we were going to cross the Piney River. And this particular road out in the middle of nowhere that you probably never knew existed, it's got a concrete, whatever you call it, spillway that every time I've done this ride before, it's been flooded and had to ride the truck across the Piney River. But this time I could ride my bike across, and I got to the other side and I saw the guy and thanked him. But what was extra cool was what I didn't know from what Diane said. His son was with him in his truck. He probably had like a 9-10-year-old kid, and he got to see his dad do that. And I just thought that was really neat.
That's very cool.
The other story that was that was a little bit more on the awkward side. Probably about 80 miles into the ride, I'm going up a hill, and there's a lady at a driveway that is standing there, and she calls out to me, Mr. Roberts, are you Mr. Roberts?" And I'm like trying, I'm going up a hill, and so I'm trying to be, "Well, yes, that's me,
I'm paddling here."
And she said, "Oh, my husband wants to meet you. And he's, and so she's turned around, she's yelling at him, and he's like kicked back in a lawn chair asleep by a little carport thing.
Are you sure he wants to meet me?
So he kind of wakes up and she's like, "He wants to ride with you." And I'm just like,
okay.
Yeah. And so he's got this monstrosity of a bicycle that's like an electric bike. And so they've got like a circular drive. So he's coming out. So he's going to come out up the road there. So I just keep on riding up there. And bless his heart, he couldn't get the shifting to work right. It's just clicking around. And so we end up riding together. And I ask him, we're going so slow. It's like I'm wobbly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, how fast does that thing go?" "Well, they say it'll go 20 miles an hour. And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's go."
The speed a little.
And it's got an override. It'll let you go 28 miles an hour. I said, "Well, let's do it." And so he just couldn't get so I rode with him for about 10 minutes. And then finally at some point I called him, he'd introduced himself. I called him by his name and I just said, "I'm so thankful for you doing this, but I got to be, in Waverly by 4:30. I got to get going.
Yeah, I got to make some time."
But I'm not at all making fun of him. I'm saying, how cool was that somebody wanted to do that, even if it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I told Janet we need to send him a nice letter and send him a Tennessee flag and thank him for doing that. So those were a couple of fun stories, and it's just the memorial service Saturday night was really meaningful. The elementary and junior high school that got flooded that's total loss. They're going to tear it all down. They haven't torn it down yet, but they're going to put a memorial park there, and so it just. We love the people of Humphreys County. They've been so good to us, and it was just a great thing. Okay.
I think that's really cool. People forget that you're our senator, but you're also senator at how many other counties?
I've got 6 total now.
Yeah.
I've got 5 complete counties, and now I have part of Montgomery County.
And that's a lot when you're trying to, when I was running for Congress and had to cover all the Upper Cumberland and all these counties. Good heavens. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it's one thing to cover one county, but when you start adding other counties, people forget you've got obligations in these other areas. So when you want him to come to your Christmas parade or something like that, he may already be committed in one of the other counties.
There can be 3 other parades going on at the same time.
I know. That's one of the things that I've seen when you're trying to get all that scheduled. It's crazy.
I don't see how the congressmen do it, but I'll say 2 things. Number 1 is for them, it's full-time job.
Yeah.
And for us, it's part-time.
Right.
And 2, they've got staff. So they frequently send staff to these things. And we don't have, I've got 1 legislative assistant and I've got 1 research analyst, but they're not campaign people and we don't have the staff to do that. So yeah, it is frustrating. You know, you go someplace and people say, "Oh, I haven't seen you in a while." And it's like, you need to come to our county more often. It's like, well, you know what? I've been here 3 times already this month. You just didn't see me because I went to a meeting to meet with whoever had the problem. Yeah.
So they're out there, guys. They're out there, and Senator Roberts is out there all the time. I call you a lot of the times, and you're off in another county because you have to be. You cover all these.
But I'm here a lot too.
I mean, you live here, so you're here for everything too. But you live here.
Well, COVID stopped a lot of the festivals where you see people, and a lot of them have. Believe it or not, there's a surprising number that have not resumed. There are a lot of barbecues and festivals that don't happen anymore, but even when they do happen, frequently those are times that people need to schedule meetings for something, some problem, substantive problem that they're trying to solve, and you end up going and you have a meeting with 5 people instead of seeing 500 people.
Right.
And in an ideal world, we really have to depend a lot on our House members to kind of represent us and speak on our behalf. And for the most, it doesn't happen every time, but like, for example, Jay Reedy, who would cover that part of it, he's always good about, I'm going here, I'm doing this, and I'm
keeping you up to date.
Know that we work together, and I mean, he's speaking on my behalf when I'm not able to be there, and I get, Jody Barrett does it a lot in Hickman County, so I get a lot of help from my House members, and that's really beneficial.
Well, and speaking of the House and the Senate, so what's going on with because I mean, you're still in session, right? You didn't finish up.
No.
So because I mean, I was thinking it was going to be done last week.
Senate's done.
You're done, so y'all don't go back.
No, we have to go back because
that's what I thought.
Okay.
So explain to us, unpack for everybody what's going on.
So from A to Z, I'll start at the beginning.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. So when we go back to the fall after the Covenant shooting, the governor very specifically worked with the National Rifle Association, the NRA, to come up with what was called what a lot of people call red flag law, other people call an extreme order of protection, and so on. But they had an idea that that the NRA had basically been working on that might be something that can make everybody happy. Now, keep in mind the goal. The goal is that a crazy person ought not to have a gun. Okay, and regardless of where you are on the Second Amendment, pretty much everybody agrees with that. The question is, how do you get there? And that's where it falls apart, because you have to have due process in order to do that, and it can't be just a reason to confiscate a gun. So the NRA had done quite a bit of work on this, and so they were in touch with the Lee administration, and they were working on something that they wanted to be considered legislatively. Now, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It doesn't matter who originates it. At the end of the day, it has to be voted on by the General Assembly if it's going to become a law. And it doesn't matter if the governor's for it, against it, or anything like that. It's still subject to the legislative process. Well, then all this stuff started happening in the House, and they expelled the 3 members. And I think the Senate has been very quiet on that because it's the House, and the House can do what they want to do, and we're completely independent. But I'll just, without wanting to offend anyone, we spent a lot of time talking to House members saying, please don't do this. You're going to turn them into heroes. And that is exactly what's happened. That's exactly
what happened, yeah.
And the House lost the public relations battle. And if you go to any other state in America, Tennessee was made the laughing stock of America for a while, and we're all a bunch of racists, and that was the outcome. It's just it, and to deny that means that I think it's undeniable. I just think there's a group of people that say, good for you, they got what they deserve. But I think the majority of the people say that didn't work the way you intended, and it's backfired. And I agree with that. I don't now. Does that mean I criticize them for what they did? No. Am I going to sit here and say I would have done anything different? I don't know. But I remember, texting a couple of House members that I'm close to, and I just said, this is not going to work the way you think it is.
Bad idea.
And if they have not committed a felony offense, we really don't think you should do that. And that's kind of where the Senate is. If it's not a felony offense, we're not going to do it. So anyway, but they did. Water under the bridge. We didn't criticize them. We took a lot of heat for it. We took a whole lot of heat for it. I can't believe y'all did. That wasn't us. People don't get the difference. Well, then when you explain it wasn't us, I can't believe that y'all didn't stand up and speak out against it. Why that's their right to do that. And because we have a bicameral legislature, it means for a bill to become a law, it has to pass both the Senate and the House. Why would we pick a fight with the House? Why would we do that? So we didn't. We just kept our mouths shut. But that also ended the session early, and it meant that this idea that had been percolating didn't get contemplated legislatively. At that point, the governor basically said, well, if you're not going to do this now, when are you going to do it? Do we need to have a special session? And do we need to come back in May? And I think the will of the House and Senate was no. Well, can we come back in June? No. What about July? No. And then I think at that point, the governor was pretty exasperated. And this is me telling you my perception of it. And I've talked to, I wasn't in the room when this stuff took place. So you have to recognize I'm just giving you my assessment, my analysis based on what I've heard. At that point, the governor was pretty exasperated. And I think at that point, kind of what he said was, okay, well, if you don't do it, then when do you want to do it? Now, this is where the breakdown occurred. According to the governor, House and Senate leadership said August, and maybe even a date specific or just late August. According to Senate leadership that was in the room, it was kind of more like, well, if you're going to do it, if you're determined to do it, then don't do it until August. But it wasn't an encouragement to do it. It was just like, kind of like, if you're bound and determined to do it at the end of August. All right. So he did. Well, at that point, everything started changing. And in fairness to the governor, he sort of felt like he got thrown under the bus on this because, everybody in the House and Senate started talking about how they don't want to have a special session. And so the special session kind of morphs from being a response to the Covenant shooting to kind of a public safety thing. And weeks tick by, months tick by. There's no real, there's no call yet. And then finally, a few weeks ago, there was a call for a special session. And it was really about public safety. And it was, in some respects, it was narrowly crafted. In some respects, it was a little bit broader than it needed to be. But the governor had an ad hoc working group of legislators that had pulled together, I don't know how many bills. It was a dozen, maybe, give or take, that they wanted to be considered that were all public safety bills. And so we went in on Monday a week ago, and then there are literally 100 bills that get filed, okay? 100 bills that get filed. And these, for the most part, are House member bills, and for the most part, senators, I think a lot of them said no. I didn't agree to file a single one because it's like, well, wait a minute. We've had a working group. 2 months ago, nobody wanted the special session in the House and in the Senate, okay? 2 months ago, we were saying, if it's not going to be in response to Covenant, if it's just going to be in general public safety, that doesn't meet the definition of an extraordinary session, we'll do it in January. Now, I know a lot of people don't get that or agree with that or whatever, but that was the prevailing attitude, in my opinion, of the House and the Senate. There's not anything extraordinary that we're doing. Let it wait until January. So that seemed to be the attitude a month or two ago. And then, lo and behold, on Monday, 100 bills get filed. And clearly, House members found senators who would sign those bills, and they got filed. There were a lot that didn't get filed. There were a lot that got filed but didn't get calendared because they didn't meet within the boundaries of why the session was called. When you have an extraordinary session, you can only do the bills that are the reason for which the session was called. You can't do all the extraneous stuff. It's not an open invitation to do your pet project. So consequently, so here we are. It's like, well, wait a minute. We went from, the House, especially a lot of House members saying they didn't want a special session, to all these bills getting filed. And so the Senate basically didn't take up all those bills. And the Senate said, the governor called a special session. The working group had a handful of bills. We have considered those bills. Some passed, some failed. We're done. Everything else can wait till January. There's not anything in the stack of stuff that has a burning need to be done right now. Mm-hmm. Now, when I look at so the House ended up carrying on, and I don't know the number. They maybe passed, maybe it's 40, maybe it's 30. I don't know what the number is. But when I look at those bills, I could see 3 or 4 or 5 that maybe the Senate ought to take up, but not the rest of them. So, as is always the case late in session, the House and the Senate, start conferring about how do we wrap things up, and what's important to you, and how do we get done. And clearly, without characterizing the nature of that meeting, clearly the House and the Senate had 2 entirely different ideas about whether or not we were done. Mm-hmm. And so that led to an impasse. And so usually when you get to that, it's like you just kind of walk away from the meeting, let everybody think about it, and then you come back together and you compromise. So instead, what happened was, there were a round of interviews last week and continuing today where, House leadership just attacked the Senate in a way I've never seen happen before. Never seen that. Now, maybe it's happened in the past. I've only been around for 10 years, and so basically all they did was make matters worse. I mean, when you're talking about your fellow Republicans worse than the Democrats do, what do you think's going to happen? How do you think that's going to play out? So the Senate's done. So any hope, which I had hoped that we'd take up 4 or 5 more bills. My attitude was I was one of the people that when it evolved from a response to covenant to, I wasn't even completely sure I was on board with having a special session in the first place, but when it evolved into public safety, I absolutely was against it. In fact, I've got text messages here to, the governor saying, I just think this needs to wait. So I fell in that category. But once he called it, once we were there, I didn't want to waste taxpayer money. And if there were some things that fit the call of the session that were worth doing, let's do them. And consequently, there were a handful of bills that I voted for. I didn't see them as, sadly, I didn't think they were super substantive, a couple of them, but one of them was one of the things that I'd championed in the past, and that is to take sales tax off gun storage stuff. So I've sponsored bills in the past where, that you don't pay sales tax on a gun safe. Well, that's a bill that I'd sponsored in the past, but they would only do it for a year. They always made it expire at the end of a year, and so this makes it permanent, and I'm all in favor of that. So, and that one maybe is kind of substantive. The other one was to human trafficking report that the TBI is supposed to do every year. They sort of do it anyway, but it sort of made it more definite in what they do. And the other codified an executive order that requires reporting into the database when someone's committed a crime in a much shorter period of time, from 30 days to 3 business days. And by the way, for any of you listening who don't sit on my side of the aisle, there are 2 things you need to know, because I've been meeting with Moms Demand Action last week and other groups. Number one is you cannot buy an automatic weapon in Tennessee. Okay? People don't know that. You cannot buy. It is currently illegal. It has been illegal to buy an automatic weapon in Tennessee. And I get blank stares of disbelief. Okay? I want to say it again. It's illegal to buy an automatic weapon in Tennessee. It is not only illegal to buy an automatic weapon in Tennessee, it is illegal to buy an automatic weapon anywhere in the United States of America, and it has been illegal since 1932.
What? I mean, really?
Really?
Well, then what? I mean, I don't know enough about guns to say.
Let me just tell you, all the
automatic weapon. What's an AR?
You pull. That's semi-automatic. There's a difference. Is you pull a trigger and it just keeps firing. That's an automatic weapon. Gangs have them. Military has them. A lot of people have them, but they've been illegal since 1932. There's a black market in automatic weapons. So all these, gang members that, and you see in the movies and stuff like that. I mean, well, first of all, it's not very prevalent, but automatic weapons.
But they would call a machine gun where you just hit a button and it just rolls.
An Uzi, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's been illegal since 1932.
I didn't know that.
I may be off a year, but it's basically been illegal since 1932. What is legal is a semi-automatic. What is a semi-automatic? Okay, think like your classic Glock handgun that probably your Springfield police officer carries, or any number of people carry. You put your magazine in, it's got 9 bullets, it's got up to, you could have 27 bullets. Okay? Pull the trigger and it fires. That's semi-automatic. There's no bolt action. It automatically ejects the spent casing and puts a new one in. That's semi-automatic. Most guns are semi-automatic. Most handguns are semi-automatic. You can have a revolver, like think Wild Wild West, or, 38 Special or whatever. But most people have semi-automatic weapons. So whether it's a 9mm that a police officer carries, or a .40 caliber, or a small something that a woman may carry for protection, right? That's the great equalizer between you and a rapist, is having a small handgun that you know how to use.
That's the key. Yeah.
And that's why if there's an active shooter situation, you may keep your gun in your pocket because you think, I'm not trained to take out an active shooter. Smart move on your part, right? But if someone is trying to rape you and it's close, you're in a dark alley, then it's a different scenario. But the important thing is, people should never buy a gun without buying training. But that's another conversation. So anyway, Moms Demand Action, they're just in disbelief that you can't buy an automatic weapon. There's like, what about AK-47s? What about this? What about that? What about the other? And it's like, you know what? It's there is so much misinformation about what's legal and what's illegal. But let's go back to the fundamental thing. Is it legal or illegal to kill someone?
It's illegal.
Okay. How hard is it to buy a gun in Tennessee? Is it easy or is it hard?
It's easy.
No.
Is it not?
Compared to other states?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't bought a gun, and I don't know
Tennessee
how long.
is not an easy state to buy a gun.
Really?
It's pretty much in the middle of the pack or the upper middle of the pack. But it is not easy to buy a gun in Tennessee. And is our background check more restrictive than the federal background check, or no?
So I don't know, because ours
is harder.
I'm not a big gun person.
I'm not either. But
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, there's so much misinformation out there. And let me just tell you, Tennessee is probably the middle of the pack on a lot of things. Okay, so people got all upset about constitutional carry last year. There are over half the states, it's easier to carry a gun than it is in Tennessee, I think, and half, give or take. In over half the states, it's easier to buy a gun than Tennessee. And in over half the state, probably even more, maybe even 2/3 the state, it's easier to pass a background check or get through the background check process than it is Tennessee. So it's not the way people have portrayed it, like it's the Wild Wild West. We've got more strict laws already than a lot of other states do, and yet gun violence and gun crime is the same all across America, regardless of how restrictive the laws are. And why would that be? Could anybody explain to me why gun violence is a problem across America, despite some states being more rigid in their laws and other states being more lax in their laws? Why is that?
Because criminals will always be criminals, and people who are living in the darkness will always live in the darkness.
If it's already illegal to do this, to do that, to do the other, to kill people, to have this gun or carry that gun or whatever the case might be, why? I mean, when I've got Moms Demand Action sitting in my office asking for more laws, I mean, the fundamental question is this: what additional law, on top of all the other laws that we have, are going to stop someone who's got evil in their heart? And Bobby Davis, can we just talk about Bobby Davis for a minute? He preached a sermon that everybody needs to go listen to about the problem is the civil war that's brewing right now, the political war that's brewing. You know, all these commentators that say,
when did he do it? Because was it this past Sunday? Okay,
we're not getting reconciled. He makes the point, and he says this so much. I've been saying this for years, but he just does such a better job of saying it than I do.
Bobby Davis Life Church in Cookeville, amazing. You need to check him out. You need to follow him.
It's a spiritual war. It's a spiritual war. But you know what? When you got half the country that won't even acknowledge the existence of God, how can you get them to have a conversation about a spiritual war, about a war between good and evil? You know, if God doesn't exist, then they don't even want to consider that as a possibility. But that's the conversation that needs to take place in the public square. What are we doing about the war between good and evil? And I'm just going to tell you, people who love Jesus don't go off and kill people. And the cynics among us can talk about the Crusades and all that. Stop. Yeah. Stop. That's irrelevant. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people who have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. They don't steal. I mean, none of us are perfect, but generally speaking, they don't steal, cheat, lie, kill.
And try to do the best we can.
What does the thief do? The thief comes to Satan. For those of you who don't know who we're talking about in the book of John, the thief comes to do what?
Kill, steal, and destroy.
Yeah. And so and what did Jesus do? I come to do what?
Bring life,
give life, give it to the full. So people who love Jesus are about a culture of life, about a culture of good, about a culture of goodness and light. And we get all caught up in this political drama and the political conflict, and we're missing what our nation needs the most.
That's your senator, State Senator Kerry Roberts. Bless your heart. Thank you for saying that.
Well, Bobby Davis said it a whole lot better than
I did.
But
so I'm going to go.
Bobby Davis.
I listened to his Saturday night version, and I think he left that out because I listened to his lesson Saturday night that he did this weekend. But I think he probably sometimes
past the salt. He was wrapping up his past the salt.
But he didn't say that Saturday night, so I need to go listen to his Sunday lesson to get it.
Yeah, 9 o'clock Sunday morning.
Okay, really I'll have to go listen to that version. But
I was shouting amen at the TV.
I love that guy. I listen to him pretty much every week. But I got to pause. We've still got several breaks we got to get in, and we need to talk about my friends Corbin Creek Greenhouse Gifts and Gardening Center. I got to go see them because it's going to be mum time really soon. I need to go get some mums that I can put on my porch and forget to water them, and they die, and then I have to get some more at Halloween. That's just what we do, right? No, I'm going to do better. I promise, Amy. And you can get mums and you can plant them and take care of them, and guess what? They'll come back again and again and again if you take care of them. But that's the key. I love going and seeing the Corbins. I love going into the store. I need to go in and get a few more pot holders that Miss Jane has made. I love those things. I have just completely tried to take out everything I've got other than the ones she has made. And if you've got, I know before you know it, we'll be having Christmas and all those kinds of things. Now's a really good time to go in and get some little items that you might need, get a little bit of gift shopping done. But the mums are looking beautiful. They're going to be perfect. We're looking at about mid-September to go in there. But whatever it is you're needing, basically, when you go by to get all the things you need, beautiful for your yard, be sure and go in the store. store. Check out all the handcrafted items from Miss Jane. I'm sure they've still got a little produce and stuff coming in from the garden, and see what they're picking out of the garden. And also check out their CBD products that could really be a game changer for you if you're like me and you deal with arthritis. So get by there, talk to them today, go and see them. They're at 4920 Highway 161, 4920 Highway 161. You can call, give them a call if you have questions. You want to say, hey, what's coming out of the garden? 615-384-3185, 615-384-3185. And when you get by there, please let them know that you turned sent you, and I'll be stopping in there real soon myself. They'll be at the farmer's market too, as long as the farmer's market goes through September, I think. I'm not sure. I'll have to check on that. We'll check in with all the fair folks this week and get an update on fair activities. But we're talking with Senator Kerry Roberts, and my goodness, some good stuff. Just kind of getting an update on what happened on the Hill. You said something. This is really random. When I hear political terms, I'm like, what does ad hoc mean? You said he had an ad hoc committee. What is that?
Informal. Yeah.
Informal ad hoc. I've heard that, but I've never really known what that meant.
It's interesting because I don't know the origin of that.
Okay, that's be one to look up. That would be a
good one to Google. Is
ad hoc? Where did that come from?
Come from some. It doesn't sound like Latin.
No, it sounds like some redneck thing or something.
It does.
But it's just when you said that, I thought, I hear politicians use that, an ad hoc, and I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, it's not in other words, it's not a standing, in this case, in this context, it's not a standing committee, but it was formed for the purpose, and it's like a working
gotcha
group,
gotcha. Well, so you unpacked everything. So you unpacked the things that you voted for. What's going to happen with the House, and when do y'all go back then? When do we expect this to end?
So what I thought like Wednesday or Thursday, and and by the way, I've heard from there are kind of three groups down there. Moms Demand Action, which is obviously a liberal group. There is Voices for a Safer Tennessee, which is attempting to be bipartisan, and they've hired lobbyists, and I think their expectations have been pretty good. Their lobbyists were real good in explaining to them the process and what to expect and what not to expect. And then there's the group of the kind of the Covenant families.
Right.
And people, this is lost on some of my colleagues. In fact, I pointed out yesterday to one of the other senators. I said, we lived in that area for 26 years before we moved to Springfield. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these families were either friends of friends, either they know us, they're friends of friends, they were bike store customers. We own bicycle stores, and so we have a lot of connections to these people. One of my friends, construction company built all of that, complex, and so we have a lot of connections, and that's why, late in the game, when some of these families have been frustrated about who will and will not meet with them, that's kind of why they probably wound up with me, is they sort of got that connection. But Wednesday of last week, I was telling them, I think we could get 4 or 5 more bills. There are a couple of things that are really important to them. One is the autopsy bill. They don't want the autopsies of these children to be released. I don't blame them. If your child is a victim of a crime, and I don't want the autopsy released. Mm-mm. Do you?
No.
And, I mean, we have a right to privacy when we're alive, and we should have a right to privacy in death. Now, if you're a perpetrator, maybe not, but if you're a victim,
yeah.
So now that bill is not cut and dried, and there are some things about it that are challenging. But I think all those things could be worked out. There's a couple other bills too, but on Wednesday I thought, just sit tight. This is kind of the typical posturing that goes on, and we'll get it worked out. And then when, House leadership started giving all the interviews and saying, talk about the do-nothing Senate and heads in the sand and blah, 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 I just thought, okay, this is not going to go over very well. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, we kind of went from, I just think that I think in hindsight, that was a really bad decision. I think those are conversations that probably should have been had private, should have been held privately. So where are we today? I think all those press conferences did over the weekend and all the phone-ins to the radio shows just basically ended it. So I don't think the Senate's going to do anything. I think everything's just going to roll over to January. And I think the Senate is done. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. I don't make those decisions. And but I think, I am a voice. I'm one of 33, right? And it takes 17 of 33 to do anything. And some of these procedural things, it takes 22 of 33. So, because you have to have 2/3 on some things. So, I'm one voice. What would I like to do? I'd like to do, 2 or 3 or 4 more bills and then move on. Do I think that'll happen? My opinion, I don't have any inside information. My opinion, no. And so, and that's going to make half of Tennessee really happy, because half of Tennessee thinks we shouldn't have been there in the first place. And it's going to make half Tennessee upset, because they're going to sit here and say you really didn't do anything. The real question is going to be what happens there's a House caucus meeting today, is what I've heard, and it's going to be real interesting to see what happens at. I've heard from quite a few House members who are being trying to protect their own relationship with the Senate, and basically saying, I don't feel the same way. So I think there's probably my judgment is there's probably some internal strife over there. I'm not representing, I want to be really clear. I've not heard from Dr. Kumar, so people listening, he's your rep. He and I have not talked about this. So when I say I've heard from House members, it's not him. I don't know where he is on all this, and that's a question for him, not me. But I just, sometimes when you say I've talked to House members, people automatically assume
they're just assuming that it's
it's one of mine.
Yeah.
So I'm not. I don't want anyone to mistakenly assign a position to him, because he and I have not talked about it. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think we'll know today. They have a caucus meeting, and then they go to the House floor, and then we go in at 4:00. And so what happens the way you adjourn a special session.
Let me pause and do a break. We got a couple more breaks we're going to need to hit, but we're talking with Senator Kerry Roberts about the update from the Hill, because we had a special session last week. I was in the teacher training, so I didn't get any much insight, so I do appreciate you getting me up to date. But I do want to pause and take a moment to remind you that there's a new business on the downtown square in Springfield, and it is the Exit Realty Garden Gate team. They now have an office on the downtown square. The broker is our very own Barry Richards, my dear friend. That's where he works from. And if you want to go in and talk to him about the background he has in marketing and how that can help you in the real estate world, if you're selling property, you cannot say enough about that. Having somebody that understands how to present your property to make sure people see it. We were looking at some of the properties week before last about, just some land that was available, some places up in Greenbrier that were available that you could purchase. And go and just check them out at the Exit Realty Garden Gate team. You can go to sellwithbecky.com or buyrobertsoncounty.com to see all their listings, or you can just pop into the square, make an appointment to stop by and see Barry, or give Rebecca a call. She's in the White House office, but the number for Rebecca is 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425. She's been at this a long time, one of the first in the area to be a seniors real estate specialist, but the big thing is they're expanding. They're getting easier to find around town. They're part of us. They specialize in Robertson County properties, but also buy and sell in the surrounding counties and across the state line in Kentucky, up in Cross Plains. Been there for 27 plus years. Great friends of this program, great friends of the community. You're going to see them just out everywhere. If there's something going on in the community, odds are they're one of the sponsors, because they're just everywhere. But go and check out that new office on the square. It's at 105 5th Avenue, the Exit Realty Garden Gate team. Barry is the broker there in the downtown office here in Springfield. And when you go by, please let them know that U-Turn sent you. Continuing our conversation with Senator Kerry Roberts, I thought it was interesting. We were talking about the extensive time it takes to, deal with, buying guns, getting permits and things like that. And Paul Rainey was saying it took 4 months for him to get his concealed permit to go through all the background checks. I didn't realize it took so long. I really didn't.
It's not easy. Hey, let me recap. Let me recap all this.
Yeah.
So I'm offering my opinion, and it's an armchair analysis. Yes, I'm have the insider's view, but I'm not included in all these meetings. I can't read somebody's mind. I don't know what their heart is. I know what they may say in an interview. I may read the press release and whatever. And based on my experience, that obviously informs my conclusions. I'm going to say this as kind of an armchair analyst and not as a senator. I don't think any good ever comes out of one Republican coming after another one. Just like I don't think it does any good for the Democrats when one Democrat comes after another one. It just, if you've got differences when you're supposed to be on the same team, when you have differences, I just don't see any wisdom in airing those grievances in the media. And so I think human nature is when someone's been publicly criticized, it's easy for them to pull back or withdraw. And so I think very rarely is the response to a public scolding that somebody says, you know what, you're right, I'm wrong, forgive me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just don't know who was advising them or what their end game was. But the Senate doesn't have to do anything. And so the question is, what now? Well, we have a resolution to adjourn. So to adjourn, sine die. This is not, sine die is Latin that means, we're final adjournment. This is not like adjourning for today. To adjourn, sine die, there's a resolution that both chambers have to pass and vote on. And until that happens, you're not officially adjourned. We could adjourn for today, but the special session is still ongoing until that resolution is agreed to by both chambers. There are also some laws in place about how many legislative days you can have and how often you have to come back. If the House doesn't pass the adjournment resolution, probably what's going to happen is the Senate has to come back, and forgive me, I don't remember if it's in 3 days or after 3 business days. I'm pretty sure it's after 3 business days. And, one senator is going to show up. The chief clerk is going to say, and act as speaker. And the chief clerk is going to say, Mr. Speaker, I do not detect a quorum. They're going to bang the gavel and they're going to adjourn without objection. Okay? 3 days later or after 3 days, whatever it is, someone else is going to show up. And this will go on until the House passes the adjournment resolution. Okay?
Oh, wow.
That's what will happen. Right now, that's my prediction as to what will happen. So the question is, how long will they do that? Well, House members have to run for re-election every 2 years, correct? They cannot raise money while they're in session.
That's important.
The senator has a 4-year term. Now, granted, some of them are up in 2024, half, but the other half are up in 2026. So this is the danger of getting, personalities and emotions involved, is because who is well served by any of this? So we've passed some bills. So to recap, the governor had an ad hoc committee. That ad hoc committee put together some bills. We considered most of those bills. We passed some of them. There were 100 other bills filed that kind of came out of nowhere. And some of them are some really good ideas. Don't misunderstand me.
They should have been filed in January.
Well, they need time. They just need time. Look, what do we complain about Washington? You file a bill on Tuesday or Monday and you expect us to vote on it on Tuesday?
Right.
Really? So no, we don't do that. So there's some really, really good bills filed. I'm glad they got filed.
Right.
I'm glad it starts conversation, but it was too much to do in the special session. And so we're beyond the definition really of extraordinary, why you'd have an extraordinary session. And so let's just handle it in January. And I think the way it should have gone, we should have taken up, the work of the ad hoc committee, which we were all familiar with, and we should have passed, those bills that were worthy of
what the governor asked you to do.
And go home. And that's basically what the Senate has done.
Yeah.
That's what the Senate has done. So all of the rest of it is just kind of political theater and drama that I personally could do without. And I have a feeling probably a lot of other people feel the same way.
Well, and there was a lot of political theater and drama building up to it, too.
But there are going to be a lot of people who are like, y'all are a bunch of do-nothings. And that's fine if they have that opinion. And then there's going to be a group of other people that say, hey, you know what? You did what you're supposed to. Now go home and stop costing us money. And I mean, there's I have respect for all the differing opinions out there, but what do we do now? And what would I do if I'm not king for a day and I don't get to make that decision? I'd pass. There's a couple other bills that I really like that I thought we should have taken up. It doesn't look like we're going to, and we'll take them up in January.
Okay.
So there's not, and there's a lot of stuff that's worthy of talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But
when y'all get back in session,
So
let's pause and do this. We're going to do it.
I got to run too.
You got to run. Thank you, Senator Roberts. Appreciate it. Have you got Cumberland Connect yet?
It is. I can see the coiled up stuff on the pole, and it's
getting close.
It's right by the house, so I know it's just a few yards away.
Oh, that's great! And we keep joking about they've been just a great sponsor, and
they're awesome. But to your point, what you've said before, people think I get all the good stuff first. No, they did this very equitably. They went to the places that were underserved, and then moved in towards Springfield or moved in towards White House, and they've done a good job. They've done it on schedule. We can't wait, and I have nothing. We are very proud of not just CEMC, but I've also got Mary Lewis and MTMC, and so all of our electrical co-ops in the state of Tennessee are just doing a wonderful job. And I tell you what, I know when you open your electric bill after a month like August, you go, good night, look how much money I spent. But you know what? That would be, 3 times that price in Texas or California.
You better believe it would be.
So we're in real good shape here. So, hey, thanks for having me. I want to end with this.
Okay.
I wish everybody would get along.
Yeah.
I wish people would do what Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand than to be understood. I wish that everybody would see things through the context of Jesus in terms of how he taught us to love each other and get along. And it's just not the world in which we live. But I hope that nothing that I've said today offends anybody. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm not trying to judge, pronounce a judgment on this. People want to know what's going on, and I'm trying to give the fairest explanation that I've got, knowing full well I may not be right on everything. It's just my judgment. It's just my assessment as to what I think is going on. And I try to be fair about it, and I hope it's accurate. But everybody just keep watching and stay tuned, and let's show a little bit of grace to other people and the people that we disagree with. And there are a lot of things that are not worth losing friendships over.
Amen.
And whether a bill passes today or whether it passes in January, I don't think it's worth doing permanent damage over. And I appreciate the fact that in the Senate we've just steadfastly said, let's just not. They're frustrated. We get it. They're venting their frustration. Let's just not say anything. Well, that frustrates people because y'all aren't saying anything. It's like sometimes the best thing to do is to not say something.
Yeah.
And I know I've said stuff today, but I'm not trying to.
No, I think you
inflame it. So.
I think you absolutely unpacked it well and gave us because people were just really curious as to what's really going on.
You know what? And you can have Dr. Kumar in here, and he could have an entirely different perspective, and that's just true. It's like the old picture that we see. That would be passed around at seminars a few years ago. Do you see the old lady or the young lady? You remember that picture?
Oh, I do.
People get to fussing and fighting over whether it's the old lady or the young lady, and it's both, isn't it? So.
Yeah, it is. And so we'll reach out to Dr. Kumar. Thank you.
All right.
Senator Kerry Roberts, thank you for joining us. This is 1100 WSGI.
Metro Nashville Police Department said charges are pending after a Greenbrier woman died following a wrong-way crash on I-65 early yesterday morning. Police say the preliminary investigation shows 24-year-old Madeline Rutledge was driving north on I-65 in a Hyundai Elantra, but she was hit head-on by a Chevy Equinox, which is traveling the wrong way. The driver of the Chevy, a 26-year-old woman from Antioch, was